Before this episode starts, I want to give a trigger warning to anyone who is sensitive to depression or suicidal themes. If you are suffering with any type of mental health or mental issue, please know that you are not alone. Links are in the description so you can get some help. Please don't suffer alone. In this episode, we'll be talking to one of my best friends, Colin Pettit. Colin and I met in ministry college and remained friends ever since. In this interview, we will discuss what it was like for him to be closeted for 45 years with his faith conflicting with his sexual identity. We'll talk about how he tried to overcome those things, how he tried to convert to being a straight person, and what that kind of meant for his mental health. I also approach this conversation without any judgment. I'm not trying to press Colin on any of his belief systems. We have different belief systems, so that's totally okay. We can still have a productive conversation. So this interview is just Colin telling his journey. At the end of the interview, some of your questions will be answered, so make sure you stick around to hear those. So without further ado, let's jump into the Deep Drinks podcast, where the drinks are deep, but the questions are deeper. In this episode, we drank Colin's favorite drink, Dr. Pepper. Let's jump into it. So Colin, you're a gay man.
That's the rumor.
Yeah. And you grew up as a Christian. Well, you didn't grow up as a Christian, did you?
No. I grew up in the country out of Bergen. I guess in some ways we were a conservative family, but not religious conservative. Like my mum went to church, and we went to church sometimes to Sunday school. But my mum never really made us endure church.
Yeah.
I think we went a couple of times, but it was never a religious thing, like a routine.
Yeah.
But I definitely went to Sunday school. I just remember vaguing out like most of the time and just colouring in. That's all I really remember about Sunday school, is colouring in and them asking questions, and you go, Jesus, that's right. And you're like, this is a cakewalk.
So you didn't really, you wouldn't really consider yourself you really got involved in Christianity further on down the track, didn't you?
Yeah. When I was, we moved to the coast when I was 17. And I had the option of completing year 12 here, which at that stage I think was going to be like Coolum High, because Sunshine Beach High didn't exist. And I really was terrified of the idea of actually doing high school here. I just really didn't think I was going to fit in, and was terrified of the idea of trying to fit in here. So I chose just to try and go and get a job. And then so I fell into, I guess, like a social anxiety, like a social phobia of sorts. Like I didn't venture out, so I stayed home all the time.
Okay.
And then eventually, though, I did get a job at Coles.
How old were you at this time?
I still would have been about 17.
So at this stage, had you well and truly discovered your attraction to dudes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no doubt.
I do have a question that I wrote down, which was it was just a bit of humorous, but on a scale from 0 to Elton John, on a scale from 0 to 100, how are you is it just it was never a stage, or have you been attracted to females or?
Not really. It's hard because sometimes I feel like the lines blur between you want something so much that you can almost convince yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't think, I am 99% sure I was never attracted to a woman, not sexually. I've been attracted towards women emotionally. Mm-hmm. But
you like it as a person, you
exactly.
are really beautiful.
Yeah. So and I love spending time with some women, but at the end of the day, I guess I had to realize that that's not a sexual thing, so that's not someone I'd want as a marriage partner, I guess, because there are many facets to a relationship, and sexuality, sex has got to be a big part of it, sexual attraction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I remember we were talking about we were just driving together once and we were talking about things that turn us on and sexual stuff. And I was talking about, I don't know why, I just brought up boobs, obviously, because it was part of the conversation. And you're like, and you said to me, like, I don't know what to do. What do I do with them? Do I push them away or do I, what would you do? What do you do with them? I'm like, well, they're boobs.
It's like an obstacle. It's like, I'm not sure.
Like, get them away.
Yeah. Look, they're really kind of getting in my space, Yeah, they're like, it'd be like finding an extra tool in the toolbox. It's like, I don't know what this does. What am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah. All the old tools I got work fine.
Yeah. This is really, it's just unnecessary.
Yeah.
But
so you're 16 and you started working at Coles. 17. You started working at Coles, and you knew you were gay at that stage.
Yeah, look, I knew way back from Mergen. Like I had an unusual infatuation with my grade 5 teacher.
Okay.
Like I was obsessed with him.
Yeah.
And
you grew up when you were growing up, like it was still very taboo to be like gay, right?
Yeah. Like it was it was the 80s, and so we had the big AIDS scare going on.
Yeah.
And I used to be terrified of those. I don't know if you ever saw them. I think you might have seen them on maybe YouTube with the Grim Reaper bowling.
No.
Oh, they were.
I might put it in the video.
At first, only gays and IV drug users were being killed by AIDS. But now we know every one of us could be devastated by it. The fact is, over 50,000 men, women, and children now carry the AIDS virus. That in 3 years, nearly 2,000 of us will be dead.
Yeah, they're infamous. They used to terrify people.
Okay.
The Grim Reaper was bowling, and it had a whole bunch of people at where the pins would normally be, and it'd be talking about like, at this stage, we don't know how it's transmitted. We don't, it doesn't really have a. Even though I think they did sort of say that it was more prevalent in the gay society with gay men, but it was taking out people left, right, and centre. So there was a real fear around it.
Yeah.
And I think it was like people almost viewed it as like something that would be a pandemic that would take out the population of the world.
Yeah.
But thankfully it never came to that.
Yeah.
But so there was a lot of fear, and I distinctly remember when I was about 17 or 18, I went to Melbourne with my mum, and this is probably why, to a certain degree, I think I may have abstained from alcohol growing up and was a bit afraid of it. Was we were on a bus, and there was a banner as you're sitting in the bus and you look up to the roof, they had banners of advertisements. And there was one there for HIV, and it was about this guy, and he's like, Jack never thought he was gay. And then one night he went out drinking with the boys, and then he woke up and he'd had sex with a man. Now he has HIV.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, that really scared the hell out of me. I was like, okay, so I drink, I lose my inhibitions, I have a one-night stand, I'm going to get AIDS, and I'm dead.
Actually, that rings a bell, because when we would sometimes invite you out to have a couple of drinks, you would... Before you have a couple of drinks now, but before you'd say, oh, I'd get too touchy. I'm saying, and we were always saying, like, get touchy. I wouldn't care. Like, as long as you're not running around molesting people, like, we're all friends here. Like, we love you for who you are.
Yeah, it's terrified of
like losing control,
and then having to pay for the price.
Yeah, and then AIDS walks around the corner and goes,
it's a death sentence.
Yeah,
well, it was then.
Yeah.
Thank God it's not anymore. But like, I knew from way back in Mergen that I was gay when I was little. I just wasn't interested in sport. Not that that's necessarily a sign of being gay.
Yeah.
But I was more interested in, I think, I used to hang around with the girls, and and I spent way too much time looking at the men's underwear section in the Kmart catalogue.
I mean,
I remember the Kmart catalogue used to come, and I used to really embarrassing, felt so guilty. I'd take it into my room for use later that night. But I was like, I was like trying to hide that I took the Kmart catalog. I was like, my mother's not going to. Now I think about it, it's like she probably would never even batted an eyelid the fact that I had my Kmart catalog in my room.
Yeah,
probably thought, oh, he's looking at toys. How nice.
Oh, so much shame.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could never let on or that you were that way inclined.
Yeah.
It's interesting though because it never became an issue at school. Well, not amongst my friends. There was a group of kids, bullies at school, that used to constantly say stuff to me like, "Oh, you know, you're gay, aren't you? You're a fag, you know, you're a homo," and they'd yell it out and stuff. And I just used to try and ignore it, but it used to get to me. But otherwise, besides that, it was never actually brought up amongst my circle of friends. And, you know, I certainly didn't bring it up. But I remember saying stupid things like we were talking about where we'd all be in the year 2000. That's 21 years ago. But, you know, and I'd be like, oh, I hope I got a great job and I'm married with kids. And I'm thinking, I said it, but I don't think I even really wanted it back then.
Yeah.
Or if I did, it would have been with a guy.
Yeah.
Not that such a thing even existed.
Yeah. Well, when did same-sex marriage get legalized in Australia? Was it 2018? I think.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I should know that. But yeah, but almost 20 years later. I mean, in a way, we've come quite far then, but at the same time, it feels like not far enough or not quick enough.
Yeah, as long as we don't go backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
But
well, so you go to you start a job at Coles, and this is your kind of journey to becoming a Christian, isn't it?
Yes, I was very much in my shell when I started at Coles, and my self-esteem had taken a huge hit, and I didn't have any friends. And then a lot of my boss at the time, and a lot of people on the checkouts where I was on the service department, were Christians. They went to one of the local churches, and they were like constantly like, oh, you know, you should come to church or come to youth group. Or eventually I gave in and I went, and I guess I found a place where I felt I belonged, and then I became a Christian. Excuse me. And then I started going to church, and you know, it's.
Was it for you becoming a Christian? Did you have like some sort of a spiritual experience, or was it more of a slow process?
Well, I made the decision.
Yeah.
You know, you make a decision.
Yeah.
That certainly wasn't an emotional one.
Yeah.
I can actually still remember thinking, actually, at the time, well, he seems to work for these people, so I'll...
Oh, like God works for these people.
Yeah. And then so it was more of a journey after that.
Yeah.
You know, developing a faith.
Yeah. And you eventually went on to do ministry work. What's it called? Where you'd go build orphanages and you'd preach the word to other
with YWAM.
YWAM, yeah.
That was an interesting time. But it's like when I first became a Christian, it's interesting because, like, honestly, for me being feeling like I was gay wasn't even a blip on my radar for like the first year.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you'd call it a grace period or a denial period, or but
so did you feel gay? Like, when you say it's not a blip in your radar, do you just not even consider that maybe the Christianity that you were getting involved with had ideas against your sexuality?
Yeah, I think maybe there was partly that, and then also partly because I just had this huge now circle of friends. I guess there was a part of me that didn't that desire to have human connection was being met in another way. Mm-hmm. So maybe that the desire to be in a partnership with someone wasn't as great anymore. Yeah, it was those needs to a certain degree were being met.
Yeah, but at those times, did you ever consider yourself like, oh, I'm not gay anymore or anything, or is it just not something that you thought of?
No, it just didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it was just not a thing that, okay.
And it wasn't till I suppose maybe through, I don't know, just eventually it became an issue. I don't remember when or why. Might have been through a Bible study or God knows what, but it eventually started to become an issue.
Yeah. And when you say an issue, do you mean that did you start to feel guilt or shame, or did you have it in like an experience of when you kind of realized that, oh no, I might be in trouble here?
Yeah, like I think I was starting to really, as a normal red-blooded male, I was starting to feel urges.
Attracted to the pastor.
Oh, God, no. No, I was just feeling urges, and I knew from what I'd learnt in the church already that it was wrong.
Okay.
So I was feeling guilt and shame, and I always struggled with I struggled with being in a relationship with God and being gay. I felt like God won't take me seriously or won't listen to me in prayer if I'm sinning.
Mm.
And then, there would be, so shame and guilt was a big thing.
Yeah.
And I went to I've seen so many Christian counsellors and pastors since, that it's, and I think probably out of the 10 or 12 that I've seen, I think only one's ever handled it what I would say would be correctly.
Yeah.
I remember.
What did that person do that was different to everyone else?
I think this person.
Was it a counsellor? Or
yeah, it was a counsellor. No, these were all Christian counsellors.
Okay.
That I'm talking about now. Well, this one in particular was like, while they acknowledged that it was not right,
mm-hmm.
there wasn't an oppression or a doom that came from it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So it's like I've heard some Christians appeal to the idea of it's like a thorn in your side, like something that you're inflicted with.
Yeah. Yeah, but then, people say, oh, that's not what they're talking about when they're talking. So it's like, it's all got to do with, you're never going to find the evidence that you need to prove something. I've worked that out for myself. So many times I've looked in the Bible for instances where God says, oh, it's okay to do this or it's not okay to do that. And it's just so up for interpretation and translation.
Do you think if God had because it's quite interesting, and we'll get back to a bit more of your story, but I just want to touch on this for a second. It seems interesting that Paul especially talks about homosexuality, and you mentioned to me that I think it was someone mentioned that he might have even made up the word that he used there because it's not really a known word, and we've translated it as homosexuality. And he said a lot of the same things Jesus did about homosexuals will not XXX, whatever. XXX, no pun. And but what's interesting is Jesus never is recorded to have talked about homosexuality, and I always found that really interesting. And it's like, if God had a specific message for us, why is there any ambiguity? Like, you know what I mean? Did you ever wonder about why there'd be any ambiguity of something that could be so important? So if one, if some people are interpreting it to be life or death, like a sin, a horrible sin, and some people are just
the
like
worst of sin.
Yeah, the worst of sins. And other people are just, don't see a problem with it at all. Why? Sure, there shouldn't. If it just seems strange that there's a little bit of ambiguity there. Did you ever ponder that, or?
Yeah, I always wished that it was a lot more black and not black and white. I always wished that there was no ambiguity.
Yeah,
I'd almost wish that Jesus had said something about it, even if it was like no.
Yeah,
yes or no. Just one or the other, because then you would know, okay, I know now.
Yeah.
But there's just, and then there's so many voices out there saying, oh, well, this scripture actually means this, or this scripture actually means that. And so, you know, and some of them you look at and you go, well, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I feel like you're grasping at straws there. Or in this one, it's like, well, you're totally disregarding, you know, for those that won't, a lot of the mainstream church won't even stop to even consider minor mistranslations or, you know, misinterpretations, because the word's got to be infallible.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's like there's just blind no.
Yeah.
You know?
I produced a video on that actually where I showed that it's almost impossible for you to hold the perspective that it's infallible. The Bible is amazing for so many reasons, but to say that, you know, that Jesus was crucified twice, because you have to take the account of John with the account of another gospel, which say that he was crucified on 2 separate days. Is, you know, like how do that, like how far do you go with how fundamental you get? But
yeah.
So I know that because we're close friends and we met in ministry college. Oh, geez, that was a long time ago.
And all those people are now powering on for God.
Is anyone from their is anyone from ministry college doing all right? Like in the Lord?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the Bible talks about us being seed on the path or something.
Yeah. But so you tried, I know you tried Deliverance Ministry, and I went to the same people just
That's
for,
right.
I went for more of a...
Didn't mention their name.
I'll blur it. We, you know, I went for more of a general deliverance. Like I wanted like the general demons to get out of me, but you wanted like...
I had very specific demons.
You had specific demons you wanted to be saved from.
Yeah.
Which
was the worst of them.
We didn't believe, as far as I remember, we didn't believe that we could be possessed by demons because we believe we're filled with the Holy Spirit, but we believed that we could be oppressed, meaning it was almost like a demon sitting on your head is the idea. And a lot of people believe that homosexuality is like that.
Yeah. Well, I believed for a long time I was afraid that I was possessed.
Yeah.
You know, like I went through deliverance, like going back to the early church when I was a couple of years after I joined the church, we had there was a move in the church where this guy was casting out demons out of people down the front of the church, and
demons.
Yes,
quotation marks.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I went down and got prayed for, and of course, you know, I was terrified that I was going to black out and not remember. And it was, you know, like the spinning and the screaming and there was none of that. I didn't feel anything. And, you know, there was, of course, that whole sentiment, well, you're not ready. You know, you've got to be able to, you've got to want it to leave. And it's like, well, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, well,
that was my biggest thing.
Yeah.
I have been told that so many times as a Christian who was gay. And when nothing happened, well, you're still holding on to it because people would pray for me like, yeah, well, as long as you're still wanting it, it'll always be there. And I explained to them, well, but I don't want it. I'm praying.
So that seems like a bit of an oxymoron or what I don't know what the word is. Maybe that's the wrong sentence, but it's like you won't want it when you won't want it. Like how do you?
Yeah, it'll go.
If you don't want it anymore, you won't want it.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. So you're still holding on to it inside. I'm like, well, I don't know where that bit is because I can guarantee you I've been praying like crazy, crying and almost, you know, just almost stress out and having a breakdown because I'm trying to pray and ask God to take this from me.
So you'd seek after God. When you prayed, did you ever get any clear answers or instructions from God, or did you ever feel like you had a breakthrough or anything like that?
No.
Not even like temporarily or...
No. I have to admit, though, that the numerous amount of times that I'd always prayed about it, I felt like God was never really so that interested in it.
Okay.
I always felt like I was the one that was more interested in
Yeah.
dealing with this.
Yeah. Was it almost like praying that God turns your hair blonde or something?
Yeah.
It's just like, if God's there, he's like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective, because I remember further on down the track, we used to catch up for coffee quite a lot, and I remember just asking you bluntly one time, because we'd always ask each other really blunt, deep, personal questions, and we could be open with each other about stuff. And I asked you, I was like, do you think that you've chosen to be gay, or do you think you're just gay? And I was like, just be honest. And then you thought about it, and you're like, I think I'm just gay. I think I'm just attracted to men. Like,
I don't know who would choose to be gay.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it's a different story. I mean, I don't think people can choose to be. I don't think someone can choose to be gay. I think there's got to be something there to begin with.
Yeah, we just before I left, my wife was watching a show where there was a gay couple in the show, and then you was coming to this. I made a little joke as I left. I was like, I'll be so disappointed if my son was straight. But it's almost flipped like that, isn't it? It is, and that's I guess a sign of the times, in that people are trying to embrace people who have been so picked on and misunderstood for so long, and so people are almost overcompensating when really it shouldn't even be. Like, I talk to people who have never had these, they never saw it as a bad thing. Like, I've spoken to friends who. I said, they said, I'm attracted to femboys or whatever. And I said, so you would you consider yourself bisexual or pansexual? And they go, what's pansexual? And I said, someone who finds themselves attracted to just people in general, not necessarily one or the other. It's kind of similar to bisexual. As far as I know, I'm probably wrong. And they said, yeah, I'm that. I went, oh, okay, cool. And we just continued on with the conversation. And it was like, do you like mint ice cream? And it's like, yeah, I do. Like, oh, okay, cool. It was so nothing. They didn't even consider it. It's not a big deal for this
current generation, the new generation, which is a nice thing.
Yeah, it is good. It is. It's good. So you tried conversion therapy or pray the gay away kind of stuff? I mean, probably not like you never went to the camps.
I never got sent to the camps. Damn it, that would have been so cool.
Just in the striped pajamas,
stuck in a dorm with 20 other hot, sweaty guys. I don't know who would have thought the gay camp was a great idea. The communal showers, like, this really is not helping me. All right, but damn, I had a good weekend.
It's funny you said that. One of my relatives said that back in the day in the 70s or maybe the 60s in the football clubs in Melbourne, I don't know how true this is. This could be one of those stories. They used to all strip off, grab each other's dicks, run around in a circle. First one to get a boner was gay, then bash him.
Oh my God.
And I just can't think of more of a stupid, like, ideologically smooth brain thing. Like, it's just stupid, right? Like, it could have been. I don't know if that was a joke, or I don't know if that's something that actually happened. But like, there was some really stupid ideas out there about this stuff back in the day, and it's really sad. But
it's kind of like, who's gayer then? The one that's running around grabbing dicks, or the one who's got a boner first?
Exactly. But it's also, you can get a boner from stimulation of any sort. Yeah. So it's like, it doesn't. I don't know. It's amazing. It's amazing. The human race is truly amazing. Like, as a species.
And amazing is a good word to use there.
Like, amazing in, like, we are so dumb.
Yeah.
And so smart at the same time. So you went through kind of conversion deliverance stuff, and you never really found that it worked.
Well, I think the first person I spoke to about it was actually, the first person I spoke to about it was at our church. We had the pastor at the time had stepped down and left. So we had an interim pastor come. And I think there was a sense of a bit more of security, being able to go to someone I didn't have no idea who he was. And he'd be gone in about 3 months.
Yeah.
So I made an appointment to go and see him. And I told him, like, with a heavy heart, shame, and he's just like, okay, yep. Well, it's just a choice. And I'm like, sorry? He's like, well, because I wanted some kind of answer as to how to change it. Or
he was your pastor, right? The head pastor?
Well, he was interim.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, there's nothing, it's just you make a choice. Do you want to live that way or not? I was like, well, that's very informative. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there was no...
How old were you at this time?
Maybe 18 or 19.
Okay.
Maybe 19. And there was no help or that was it. That was the end of the appointment. And then I started seeing a counselor in the church. And this person was just absolutely useless. Like he could have done more damage. I said to him, like, I remember that the first time I saw him, and I just poured out my heart and what I was struggling with and stuff. And I said to him, but don't worry, I'll never act on it because, like, I'll kill myself before I do anything, do anything gay. And he's like, oh, that's good. That's good that you've made that decision. Now, and
sorry that it's that's horrible. Wait, so you said I'll kill myself before I act out as a homosexual.
Yeah. And he said,
good.
That's good. It's good that you've made that decision.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember being taken back by that then. And I was like, well, that's not the answer. That's really not what I was expecting. I was like,
wow.
Even then I was expecting him to go, look, well,
don't kill yourself.
Yeah, don't kill yourself. don't think like that.
Yeah.
But there was like, oh, that's good that you've made that decision. And I'm thinking, not sure that's what's supposed to be said. But anyway, we'll keep going.
I can't. So throughout, that's incredible. I'm a bit taken back by that. And at this stage, you hadn't you hadn't been with a man. Like you weren't hooking up with people or anything like that. No. Okay. And were you interested in that? I mean, besides like obviously, we're men. Well, I guess anyone sexual wants to either put their thing in things or have their thing, have someone put their thing in their thing or whatever. People want to do that stuff, but you never act. Did you ever have did you ever want to act on that, or did you ever go and act on that?
I never acted on it, but I wanted to.
Yeah,
but it was more like I didn't. I think even then it was more. I've always been a guy that wanted more of the relationship.
Yeah.
Sex in a relationship than just sex. So I never went out trawling or cruising or.
Yeah.
But
that's actually back to the conversation we're having in the car, and I was talking about the boobs and stuff. We talked about the same thing. We talked about threesomes, and you said you've never even you don't find any interest in the idea because for you, it's about making love and about the connection you have with that person.
Yeah, I don't understand the concept of wanting to introduce a third person into that.
Yeah, that
seems like a break of trust to me. But I mean, that's just you. Yeah, that's my personal choice.
Yeah. Everyone's different. But I found that really interesting because a lot of the time people have this perspective that the homosexual lifestyle entails just debauchery.
Yeah, and I believed that for a long time
until you met my friend.
Yeah, and then I realized, straight people are gross. No,
I do remember you actually. One of our good friends, he came over, and he's telling his wild party day stories and stuff. Hilarious, great stories, absolutely fantastic stories. And but you left there thinking, wow, like I would never do any of that stuff. Like I'm not a sick person. He's not sick either, but you're not. You know what I mean?
I just didn't think anyone, like, I don't know, I just had always sort of thought that, gay people were like the most debaucherous and the most sinful, and that's something that they would do. And then to hear that a straight person's done that and worse, it's like, okay, well maybe I've been given the wrong leaflets.
He's had a fulfilling, amazing life. Like he's had some experience.
Yeah, he could write books in a couple of years.
He really could. They're amazing stories, and it's just he's a great guy. But I find that a lot of the time actually, a lot of people, a lot of the typical bros that you'd meet, they have similar stories. It's going out, partying, hooking up with random people, strangers, or and I won't go into more detail, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So eventually, I wanted to ask, did you ever get to a really dark place in your in your, I mean, you mentioned that you said you'd try and kill yourself before you even went out. Did you ever get to a dark place where you thought that might be your only option?
Yeah. Yeah, there have been a couple of times where I've where
you've had been so desperate or
so desperate for a way out, and that things weren't going to get better. That I was never going to be straight. And therefore I was never going to be acceptable to God. And so it's better just to end it all now than just to keep going on with this constant battle. There was a time where I held some tablets in my hand, and there was another time where I really sort of wanted to swerve into a light pole, and but both times never eventuated because not because I was strong, not because I felt God calling me otherwise or anything. It was mainly because my cousin had committed suicide, and I saw how it destroyed the family, and I just couldn't do that to my mum and dad. And that's the only reason. I just didn't want to do that to another human being. So otherwise, I'd thought about it.
Wow, it's I'm so sorry you had to go through that such darkness, And it's funny because you look back now, and if you could just grab yourself and shake yourself and tell yourself it's going to get better, it's dark stuff. So eventually you decided to come out though.
Yes. I can't remember what led up to it. I mean, I know it had been a long time. And
I remember you wearing these like little pink booty pants and
and my sparkly shirt.
No, we were having a lot of deep conversations, having coffee around the same-sex marriage stuff, and I remember you mentioning that you felt somewhat you were happy to just stay in the closet. I remember this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you felt responsibility for people who may be people who may be closeted, who may be coming up after you, and you believe they should have lived their best life and come out of the closet. And when you say come out of the closet, it doesn't mean you're going to be like, all of a sudden you're just going out banging everyone. You just meant, as far as I can understand, you just meant just being honest with people around
just being
you.
honest.
Just like, well, I'm attracted to.
Yeah. I mean, even if you may have someone in the church that's gay, and they and themselves may not feel comfortable with ever being in a relationship. But I think I still believe they should be able to be honest with who they are.
Yeah.
Not have to pretend in conversations, oh, yes, she's attractive, or, oh, yes, I'm looking at talking to girls, and, it's just because you're not being who you are.
Yeah. And so do you think that was part of the process, and also the same-sex marriage conversation in Australia? Do you think that, or do you have a particular moment when you decided to come out of the closet, or because a couple of your close friends knew, but it was always from the perspective that, I remember when you first told me, you wrote on a piece of paper to Danny and I, and you said, I used to be gay. That was the phraseology you used. And I think you were almost trying to test the waters, because if we,
that was definitely testing the waters.
Because if we rejected you, if we didn't,
you're only rejecting a version of me that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. But truly, you were still gay, and people knew you were still gay. Or I think you used to use the term, I have gay tendencies.
Yeah.
And I mean, which is all just
either
different ways
I
of
used to
saying
say
the same
either
thing.
I used to be gay, or I have gay tendencies, or I'll never. But I know there'd always be that disclaimer, but I'd never act on it.
Yeah.
And it's just like a person should never have to put a disclaimer against who they are, their identity. It's demeaning, and it's discouraging, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that is, again, that's all the shame. There's a whole lot of shame around being gay in the church, and that's really sad. I mean, I recently had someone in the church that is of high status, and they were saying that the hardest thing for them to try and figure out as a church is their response to gay people, because you've got one extreme of churches, which what he believes is an extreme, is where they're allowed to come into the church and they're just accepted as any other couple. You're married, it's great. You can be in ministry, that's fantastic, that's awesome.
That's one extreme, is it?
To him, it's considered an
okay.
extreme. And then the extreme which he said he feels like there's evidence for in the Bible, and that is that they're meant to be cast out, because
of the
expel the immoral brother,
Yep.
And I could tell just from the way he was saying was he felt like that is what they're meant to do, but you can't really do that in today's society.
Right.
So it's like,
do these people though? What always gets me is I'm sure they know that gluttony is a sin, right? I don't know any Christian that has a healthy BMI. I mean, everyone overeats these days. They overindulge in everything. They drive around in flashy cars. They literally are gluttonous towards or materialist. Like there's a whole Instagram page called Preachers and Sneakers, with all these preachers wearing $1,200 sneakers and stuff, which is $3,000. It's very materialistic, gluttonous. Me. I want these things worldly. The Bible says, friends of the world means you're enemies to God. Friendship with the world is enemies to God. Something along those lines. Are you telling me the people who would kick out the gay to leave their church would say the same thing to someone who orders 2 burgers at the cafe after church? Oh, excuse me, what are you doing with 2 burgers? Get out!
Yeah.
To me it just reeks of hypocrisy. If you want to be consistent, but be consistent. You know what I mean? Like, it's. I think that's what bothers a lot of people. Is it just seems, or you got pastors on their 5th divorce, or and then they're arguing against the sanctity of marriage being broken by homosexuality, and it just seems unfair.
Obviously, I haven't been back to church in a little while.
Right. But that's you're mainly busy
at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to go back, but I've never been someone who wanted to go to a gay church. I know that we've talked about that before, about going down to Brisbane. I don't feel like gay people should have to have their own church.
Yeah. I
kind of feel like that's a step in the wrong direction.
It's fine for people who want that, but for you, it's not something that.
Oh yeah. Like it's great if people want it, but I feel like it shouldn't have to exist. You know what I mean? People who are gay should be able to find a church where anyone can go. But I feel like I know enough about Christianity to know that positions itself as a religion of grace and love. Also, or if I accept you in your lifestyle, how is that loving?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
So
that's a good one. I mean, it makes sense logically, but then at the same time, I just wish they would apply it consistently across all of the board. There's one more section that I did have for this interview. Well, actually 2, but the last part's a bit separate. But so I did want to talk about when you actually made the leap and when you became living as a gay dude, as a raging homosexual.
As a homosexual.
And because I remember there were some really interesting and funny moments, probably heartbreaking for you as well as funny. They're funny to me, but heartbreaking to you. No, they were funny all around, especially if you look back to them, where you were trying to navigate relationships.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, most people would learn in primary school, mid school, or high school. You were learning at 40-something years old,
Steady on.
And so you're having, you're meeting people online and stuff. And I remember one time you're saying I hope this is okay to say, but you're saying, I'll cut it out if it's not, but you're saying it's confusing. I said hello to this person and I wrote 6,000 words about who I am as a person and they haven't responded. Or they responded really short. And I'm like, wow. And I had to explain to her, I was like, well, imagine going into a cafe and you sit down with someone and then, and you're meeting Ben or you're meeting John or someone and John's like, my mother just died, and like, and just say, whoa, can we just talk about our favorite movies first?
Yeah.
But I remember.
See, in my mind though, I'm putting all my cards down on the table and go, okay, look, I want a serious relationship, and so here you look at this. And look at this, and then read this.
Quickly reject me, or don't
sign
reject
here,
me.
Initial there, and if you agree to, this, you're okay for this, then let's move forward.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I can see now that that's not how the real world works,
Yeah.
and I know you're probably right. You do learn that stuff growing up.
Yeah.
But I certainly never did, and
you had a lot of catching up to do, and you said like, I want to get married now. Like I want to, I've spent so much of my life like hidden that you just want to be in a happy, loving relationship and stuff. And
there is that. I don't have anxiety about it now, but there was a lot of anxiety when I first came out about the fact that I came out so late and I'm running out of time. I need, if I want to end up at this, at B, happily married, in a great relationship, happily married in a house or whatever, I'm running out of time. I've got to get there now. And then that, of course, that adds pressure to you, and then the way you interact with everyone just comes off as desperate.
Yeah. And then it's interesting though, because at the same time you're complaining about how many old guys there were on all these websites, and you're like, oh, is there anyone my age? They're all 85 years old, and I'm like, you're not going to run out of people looking for relationships, I think.
Yeah.
But it's actually cool too, because you're in a couple of weeks you're heading over to America to meet your long term, I guess, long distance partner for the first time.
I don't know if you'd appreciate being called partner.
Well, love interest.
I'll call him my partner. Yeah. Marcus.
Yeah.
He lives in West Virginia, and we've been talking for this February. It'll be 2 years. Wow. So I probably would have gone over, a lot sooner, but COVID hit.
Yeah.
And while it's been really sucky, in many ways it's probably been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Because it's really forced us to get to know each other in every possible way that we can, minus physical.
Yeah.
And, because it is a tendency for people to move, I think, into the physical too quickly.
Yep. And
so not being able to do that, we've explored every other facet of each other's existence, mentally, spiritually, even philosophically. We've talked about stuff. So it's been very interesting.
Yeah. Do you have what are you going to do when you first see him? Are you visioning a big hug or,
A hug and then maybe a kiss. Oh. But I kind of feel a bit weird.
Don't make me blush.
I kind of feel like it's America, so I'm a little bit hesitant.
Yeah.
I mean,
is West Virginia a...
It's a red state.
Okay.
So it's more Republican.
So it's not San Fran.
Yeah. It's not San Fran, no.
Okay.
It's definitely like a ultra conservative, and we've discussed it. And he's like, we don't hold hands or we don't kiss in public. And
yeah. Would that be the same for all couples, though? I imagine, right? Or is it?
No. I'm sure it's perfectly fine for straight people to do.
Okay. Woo, America.
Yeah. It's interesting.
That's the same with everywhere, I guess. You have more conservative areas and more.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I looked at Smart Traveller, the government website, where it talks about what to, watch out for.
Do they have like a gay map where it's like
no? But they do actually have a warning that says,
"Oh wow,
be warned that more or less, that LGBTQ is not necessarily a safe place in the US, all throughout the US."
Oh, okay.
And I was just like, wow.
That's interesting.
I never thought that I'd ever see that on the US. Like, I mean,
it's nice though that the government at least acknowledges that. They're like coming to bat for you, but yeah, it shows that we've got a long way to go as a society.
Yeah.
And these conversations is what I hope, conversations like this, where we can learn different people's perspectives, is what I hope can help that process along. Well, I guess the part of the question though is, now that you're going overseas and stuff, besides all the stress of getting all your tests and stuff, and and finishing
It
up
was
with
COVID tests, by the way.
and we're gonna have to bleep that word. No,
What, COVID?
maybe, I don't know, YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they don't like misinformation and stuff.
Okay.
But I think it's just a whole drag, to be honest. But all the tests. Yeah, not sexual.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
Like,
sorry.
not like HIV or anything. Okay, so just normal tests.
So would you compare yourself to like when some of the moments in your belief system were conflicting with your identity? Would you say you're happier now, or would you say coming out of the closet has made you happier or more fulfilled?
I think it's definitely made me happier, and I don't think it's made me more fulfilled because I kind of feel like fulfillment comes from something you do. You know what I mean? Like I'm happier because I am just who I am, and I've admitted to who I am, and I'm living that truth. You know, I suppose I'll probably feel more fulfilled maybe if I find someone and I settle down. You know, that's a bit more fulfillment. Definitely happier. Yeah. I there's still a lot of internal conflict with the fact that I think with my faith and where I stand on my faith.
Has your religious beliefs or your spiritual beliefs changed at all throughout the process?
Yeah, it's a very good question. My faith, it's definitely adapted or evolved or whatever you want to call it. I have a very bad taste left in my mouth from the church. I don't have a great deal of love and respect for the church. My faith, I still believe in God. I still believe, I think, in Jesus. I still believe in but I don't know as what that looks like. Like, I don't definitely don't believe that the written word that we have is infallible. I believe the word of God is infallible, but whether or not we have that word or not is a different story.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
It's just constantly evolving, I think.
Yeah, I think it does for everyone. It's just maybe for you, it's been a lot more at the forefront of your mind. I think people's faiths change throughout their whole life. Before we end this podcast, I have some audience questions.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So some of the audiences of this channel and some friends of mine that I knew are interested in this kind of subject have a bunch of questions for you. So are you ready to answer them?
Maybe.
How long is your... No, I'm kidding. Okay.
Well,
So I got three kind of categories of questions. So one is about the church, which is what people are interested in. One is more personal for you, and one is advice, and that's where we'll kind of end on. So some of the church questions. So do you feel that some churches and ministries have weaponized guilt?
yes, definitely. Like, okay, weaponized or have an extreme lack of understanding of how detrimental and damaging guilt can be. Like, I remember being taught when I was in the church that the only way I would ever another way I'd only ever be able to move past my sin, as in, have entertaining thoughts about homosexuality and blah, 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 was to get to a repentance. And the only way to get to repentance was, I had to pray for it. And so it was, and I remember praying, thinking, oh, I've repented, Lord, because I was on my knees for 2 hours and I was just crying and I was praying. And then the next day I was looking at porn or something. It's just like, it's okay, so then that repentance wasn't real. So it's guilt. It's just, and then it just, your whole world just collapses again. So it's definitely, and I think, some churches definitely do use that as a weapon, the guilt.
Would you see that, like, if you were to pray and repent and that process, and then the next day you'll find yourself looking at someone or having perverted thoughts or looking at porn or something, would you see that as like almost like fulfillment that you, like not fulfillment, but like evidence that you were like broken, or would you interpret that as like, I'm not good enough or something?
Not good enough.
Yeah. Okay.
That my repentance wasn't sufficient.
Yeah.
I wasn't broken enough. I didn't want to be straight enough, and not even just straight. I didn't want to serve God, and I didn't love God enough that I was able to break the sin of homosexuality.
Yeah. I've experienced that same thing.
Yeah.
Someone said, I know that your sexuality conflicted with your Christian faith, but did you ever consider Christianity? Did you ever question Christianity for not supporting your sexuality?
Yeah, probably the church more than anything.
Okay.
Um,
Because you never viewed it as like God doesn't like you or accept you. You more viewed it as the church, I guess.
in the latter part of
Yeah.
before I came out, yeah.
Okay.
Before that, no, I did think it was God.
Okay.
And then that slowly sort of changed. And I suppose as I did more of my own research and started to look at what other people talk about, when other people talk about in interpretations or mistranslations in the Bible, and how this person was never even using the word homosexuality, they were using another, and it's almost like it's been engineered or rewritten to target gay people. So,
and you've spent a lot of time actually doing Bible studies with some of the elders in a church, didn't you? And eventually, when you got to the end, I think you've told me this story. Eventually, when you got to a spot where they basically said, "Well, we just have to trust that they knew what they were doing."
yeah, look, we studied scripture for the words that were used, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The translation that was used.
Because there's 8 verses that talk about homosexuality. Is there?
I can't remember.
Something.
But we got to a point where I then wanted to delve into the original Hebrew or the Greek, and how it may have been mistranslated. What other words could it mean? And yeah, I was told, well, we just have to believe that the people that made the translation chose the right words.
Right.
And I guess that goes back to that infallible thing. You can't question whether the Bible is right, because then it becomes...
Then what else do you question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did the messages preached in church ring true in your life?
I have to be honest, so many of the messages I would not even recall.
Yeah.
I'd be sitting in church and then I'd come out and I'd be like, what did he talk on?
Yeah.
I don't remember what he spoke on.
That was the demon. That's because the demon
it
fogged
was.
you.
It was
It's obviously,
blocking
yeah.
everything.
Mirrors and stuff, yeah.
Terrible, smoke and mirrors. Yeah, I know. Sometimes. I suppose it spoke to me on subjects that were close to my heart already. Things like community and looking after people that were lost and broken.
I think that's something that the church does fantastic at, and that I really wish that that's something that we should be commended on.
We'll leave it there.
Unless you're gay.
They're great at greeting in that initial couple of months, and then after that,
yeah, unless you're gay or something, yeah, or God forbid, like you're a transgender or something,
or even a little bit needy,
yeah, or have some issues,
yeah. If you have issues, then.
Unless you if you can wear all like white t-shirts and jeans and you're quite fashionable and you can sing on the band, you're well good. And you're wearing
this,
yeah, and you're wearing $1,200 shoes.
Yeah.
Were you more afraid of the judgment from God or judgment from your peers?
Again, that's one of those things that changed.
Yeah. Okay.
So probably for the first 20 years, it was a fear of judgment of God and eternal damnation. And then it became a fear of how people would react.
Okay.
More than anything.
Yeah. Did you have pushback from any church members when you did? I know of some, but of pushback when you did come out of the closet?
Yeah.
Do you have any like shocking stories or anything like that?
Well, I had some people say, why don't you just stay in the closet?
Yeah. Ew.
And then, I had instances where I was told that I couldn't hang around like the staff of the church. I was very good friends, and I had a lot of friends in the staff of the church that I was attending. And I would study there at church as well. I was studying at one of the universities, and they have a big cafe, and I'd go and sit at the cafe and study. And it was just good to get out of the house. And then I came out as gay, and
for 12 years you'd been going to this cafe.
Yeah. And I think I naively thought that everything was going to be okay when I came out, because No
they
one
already knew, right? They already knew. It's just that not everyone knew. Yeah.
And I was initially told that I shouldn't come to the church to study anymore because I was a distraction. And
I mean, you're a distraction.
I
for the
am a
whole 12
distraction.
Years, that whole 12 years you were a distraction. Yeah.
But now it's too much.
Yeah. Maybe it was the pink pants you were wearing.
Yeah.
And the
That's very distracting. That was a bit hard. And then I think I went overseas or something, and then I came back. But the issue came to surface again, and I asked this person why I couldn't study at the church, or even just come in and have lunch, because I think I wasn't studying at that stage.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even come and have lunch with the staff. And I was told it's because I was potentially a bad spiritual example towards the leaders and the staff at the church. And it's like, well, if the staff can be easily misled by, not that I was going there to mislead anyone anyway. I was just going to have lunch with people who were my friends. And it's not like I was preaching the agenda of homosexuality. Like, we're recruiting. I was just talking about my life and the church and their life.
You were also involved in, I don't want to give too much away, but it's not like a homeless shelter or it's like a food service. You're stocking shelves and stuff for a food service. And you were told that you couldn't be part of that, right? Or something, because you weren't attending church, even though there were people were stocking shelves who weren't attending
Or what
church.
had happened was I had made the decision that there were people that were leaders, and then there was and I felt like I wanted to save that friendship, and I felt like the only way I could save that friendship was if I actually went to another church. Then I wasn't under their leadership.
Yeah.
So, because my sexuality was an issue.
Yeah.
So I thought if I go to another church and remove that from the equation, then we can remain friends. And then I was told that if I did leave the church, that I wouldn't be able to volunteer as a volunteer in this service.
It's like a separate community thing.
Yeah. It's not.
But there were people in that who didn't attend the church, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But for you, it was different.
Like 80% of the people that were volunteering there didn't have anything to do with the church.
But for you, it was different because you used to attend the church and
Yeah.
Seems almost like they just didn't want you around.
It certainly did seem like that,
does,
didn't it? How to kick someone out without saying it's because you're gay.
Yeah. Do you think the church's stance on LGBTQ issues have caused a lot of people to become irreligious? Do you think it's caused people to lose their faith or walk away from their faith?
Yeah. I definitely think that, because I just feel like the church is meant to be a place that's inclusive. I mean, if you look back to the Old Testament, I mean, God instructed the Israelites to build an outer court around the temple for the Gentiles. So God was being inclusive of people which were disgusting and outcast back then. And we can't do the same in an era of grace now.
They could put like a little fenced yard for all the homosexuals and lesbians.
Put up some umbrellas and make it look nice.
Put out a nice spread.
Yeah, put out a nice spread.
Okay, so over to the personal section, personal questions that people have asked. Was there ever the one that got away that you never felt like you could truly express yourself with because you were closeted?
Yeah, I've always had crushes though.
Yeah.
I've always had crushes over the years that I've never, you can't say anything to. Like I did have one person that I crushed on heavily for many years back in my first church.
What was her name?
Pardon?
What was her name? No, sorry.
And this person eventually knew. It became sort of obvious, and it sort of like it ended our friendship. That person probably had all rights to do so because I was confused. I was, I wasn't in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
I hadn't even sort of come out. So, and this person, and he wasn't gay.
Yeah.
So,
well, that makes it quite hard to have a loving relationship.
It's hard to have a gay relationship when one of you aren't gay.
In what ways do you think being closeted and hearing homophobic messages growing up has affected your confidence and self-esteem?
It had affected it a great deal because you always felt discredited from being able to be involved in certain things, especially, like when I came out in the church that I'm in sort of now, there was an expectation that I had to step down from working with children. And I hated that because I loved working with the kids. And, I wasn't asked to step down.
But it was just like
I stepped down because I wanted to save my friend at the time, who was also my pastor, the grief of having to do that.
But the thing too is when we say that you came out, it's not like you came up on a Sunday morning, got on the mic and told everyone.
No.
You just, when someone asked you, nothing changed really. It's just if someone asked you like, hey, you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm actually gay. Like you just wouldn't hide it if someone asked. Like it's not like there was this big thing. People talk and then it gets around and then homophobic parents are probably going, why is he teaching kids? It's as if that's like
I'm handing out agenda pamphlets,
Yeah, from the gay agenda.
Want to be gay? Want to be gay?
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I don't know why are they. I don't understand where they're coming from because they're either afraid that I could turn someone gay, or are they afraid that I will give their child, who's already probably going to be gay, the impression that that's okay. Now, if my kid, wouldn't you want someone to be there for them to let them know that it's okay to be who they are?
Yeah.
Or would you rather your kid kill themselves? I mean,
I know it's
any parent that would choose to have their kid kill themselves over being gay is like
it's not a parent.
Is not a parent. Yeah. Should never have been allowed to have kids.
I know.
In fact, should be just sterilized right now.
There's so many people who I'd love to take away the ability to have kids.
If forced sterilization
Jokes.
wasn't closely linked to Hitler, I'd be all for it as well.
That's jokes.
You hear that, YouTube joke?
Do you feel shame around your sexuality, or did you? And if yes, do you think it's because you believed your identity is shameful, or because you were in a shameful environment?
I definitely felt ashamed of being gay and feeling that I was gay, and it wasn't. I think back then I didn't make a discernment between my environment and my life. My environment being the church was one and the same as my life, So, yes, it definitely, looking back upon it now, I know that it was responsible for making me feel ashamed, but I was ashamed that I was gay.
Yeah. Does the shame affect your life? Do you still feel shame in your life?
Oh, that's a hard one because I don't feel ashamed of being gay anymore, not at all, but I still feel ashamed that sometimes I catch myself almost excusing myself. Just every now and then I'll do something like, I don't do that because, I'm not interested in women because I'm gay or something. And it's like, why am I making it sound like I'm apologizing for the fact that I'm gay?
As you said that, it makes a lot more sense to me now about the pride, parades and stuff. It's the antithesis of that. It's the I am who I am.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. And the only thing I think I'm ashamed of that's still attached to the past is there have been, I think, 2 instances where I've hurt women in my past where I wanted so much to be straight. And there was even people, that sort of like championed the idea of just go out with a girl and just, almost like, what's that old saying? Fake it till you make it, And so I did go out with two girls, and I loved them very much as they were very good friends, but that was it.
Yeah.
There was no physical attraction there.
Did you you didn't physically you didn't have sex with them or anything either?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. How do you imagine your life would be different if you were raised in an LGBTQI plus affirming society or environment?
Well, it wouldn't have existed in the 80s, not out at Mergen. It's hard because that's a really hard one because look, I've seen so many shows that I've just broken down and cried because it reflected on the lives of gay men in the 70s and the 80s, and just the rate of people that were getting HIV and dying of AIDS, and it was like plague proportions. So a part of me feels like a little bit grateful that I didn't rush out into the 80s and then maybe the early 90s and explore that lifestyle, because now I'm alive and I'm healthy. But you know, it's a catch-22, I guess, isn't it? I mean, I didn't have the youthful experiences that a gay man has, but I was also kept safe.
Do you think you would you'd be more confident in yourself though if you grew up from the start having a society that didn't care about?
Yeah.
No one should care really about sexuality. No one should. It shouldn't be even your talking point. It's just okay.
Yeah, but you need the whole society to be on board. You know what I mean? Like,
well, there are some people who really hate like mint ice cream, but it's not really a conversation that you talk about. I'm gonna skip that one because we kind of talked about it before, and we're gonna move on to the advice stage. So we've got 3 big questions here. Do you think society is moving in the right direction today in supporting LGBTQI plus communities, or do you think there is something else that can be done better?
I think we are moving in the right direction, but I fear that there is an unnerving push by the right now. They seem to be getting louder and stronger, and you're seeing a reversal of freedoms for LGBTQ people in China and in Russia for quite a while, but and other countries. And I do worry that is some parts of the world stepping back from those rights. And I worry about the US, of course. You're always going to have a problem in a country like the US where it was the Supreme Court that decided that same-sex couples can have the right to marriage. You know, people bitched and moaned and complained about having the plebiscite in Australia. But at least at the end of the day, the people of the nation had their voice heard and they said yes. So you can't, I mean, they can introduce laws and legislations to try and overturn that, but you can't overturn the voice of the people. And that is that the majority of our country support people of the same sex to have the right to get married. Whereas in the US, that can just be overturned like that.
What would you say to your 20-year-old self?
I was going to say, buy a whole whack of condoms and go out and have a good time.
Buy Bitcoin.
But use, say it with me, Apple. I would say,
we're talking 50 years ago.
Yeah. Fuck off. It took me a second. I was like, yeah, what? No, you know, I don't want to say don't get involved in the church, but because it was a vital piece of played out to be who I was. But not only did my faith shape me to who I am, I feel like it also took years away from me. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like, what advice do you give to someone when I don't know what the ramifications of that advice will be? You know?
Would you tell us, like, let's say just around the topic of your sexual identity, what would you tell yourself?
I would say, be honest, be truthful to who you are, live who you are, and make everything else bend around that. Yeah. Not the other way around, like let everything in your life bend around your faith, your Christian principles or what the church says. You are gay, live that, love everyone else, just love people, be honest with yourself, and adopt everything else around your life, but let it all come around your identity, who you are.
And the last question, what would you say to someone who may be closeted because of their religious identity today and who is maybe watching this podcast wondering, maybe they're 15, maybe they're 20, maybe they're 30, and they're wondering, you know, what they should do or what. Of course, this is hard too because there's countries where you could be killed for being gay still.
Yeah.
which is another whole thing. But let's say they're in.
I would say if you're in a safe country like the West, somewhere that's technically the West, I would say that you're probably going to always never feel happy until you accept who you are, and that perhaps you need to not abandon your faith. I would never suggest anyone abandon their faith, but find a middle ground, find a moderate expression of your faith.
And would you say there's a difference between accepting who you are and having a gangbang with 15 dudes?
Definitely.
That doesn't mean you have to be debaucherous or anything.
No, or maybe maybe the church that you're attending right now isn't the church where you need to be. Maybe you should be looking for a more liberal church that you can go to, and then you can just be yourself and be open and honest, and you're still going to learn all about your faith. You're still going to be able to have a relationship with Christ, but you won't be struggling. Every time you go to church, you're not going to be struggling with what you're not, what you can't do, what you can't be. You're not enough. You're not good enough. You'll be able to focus properly on your relationship with God or your Christian expression, and still be who you are. You know what I mean? Like, too much time is sacrificed on trying to change something that you can't change. And if that's not, how is that honoring to God? If you're going into a church building and you're spending all your time thinking about trying to change one aspect of yourself instead of focusing on Him. So
that's a really profound point. That's good. Thank you for coming on the Deep Drinks podcast, Colin. It's been a wonderful
Please have me back.
Okay.